Stop taking your vitamins the way your doctor told you to. I'm serious. If you're over 60 and you're swallowing a multivitamin every morning thinking that's your insurance policy against aging, I need you to listen to what I'm about to tell you because what I'm about to share might be the opposite of everything you've been told. I'm Dr. Daniel Hayes. I've spent over 20 years working with patients in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and I've watched a quiet epidemic unfold in exam rooms across this country. Here's a statistic that should stop you in your tracks. A study tracking older adults found that nearly 40% of people over 75 who report feeling fine are already experiencing measurable muscle and bone decline that won't show symptoms for another 5 to 10 years. By the time you feel it, you've already lost a significant chunk of what you can't easily get back. That's the part nobody tells you. Aging isn't a cliff. It's a slow leak, and most people don't even know the faucet's been dripping until the tank is half empty. Now, before we dive into the 5 habits that I believe can change the entire trajectory of how you age, I want to ask you something, and I really do mean this. Tell me in the comments how old you are right now, and tell me one thing about your body that surprised you this year, good or bad. Maybe you climbed a flight of stairs without stopping for the first time in years. Maybe you noticed your grip isn't what it used to be. I read every single comment, every one. This channel exists because of the conversations we have down there. So don't just scroll past this part. I want to tease something right now because I don't want you clicking away before we get to it. Item number 2 on this list is something almost nobody talks about, and it has nothing to do with diet or exercise in the way you think. It involves something happening in your gut of all places, and a hospital study out of a major research university found it predicted fall risk better than grip strength did. Stick around. We're getting there. Let's count down from 5 to 1 because I want you to feel the momentum build. Each one of these matters, but they are not equal. The further down we go, the more powerful and the more overlooked these habits become. Number 5. Stop sitting like your chair is a recliner for your whole life. I say this gently but firmly because sedentary behavior after 60 is one of the most underestimated threats to long-term independence that exists. A widely cited analysis following older adults over several years found that those who sat for more than 10 hours a day had a 65% higher risk of needing assistance with basic daily activities within 5 years compared to those who broke up their sitting every 30 to 45 minutes. That number startled me when I first read it, and it changed how I talk to my own patients. Here's why this matters specifically for an aging body. When you're young, your muscles store glucose efficiently, even after long stretches without movement. But after 60, something called anabolic resistance kicks in. That's simply your body's reduced ability to build and maintain muscle, even when you're eating enough protein or technically exercising. Prolonged sitting accelerates this resistance because your muscles, especially the big ones in your legs and glutes, essentially go to sleep. Blood flow slows, and a molecule called lipoprotein lipase, which helps your muscles pull fat out of your bloodstream for fuel, drops dramatically within just 1 hour of uninterrupted sitting. Think of it like a delivery truck that only unloads packages when the engine is running. Once it's parked too long, deliveries stop and that unused fuel gets stored as fat instead, often around the organs where it quietly drives inflammation. I think of Margaret, a 73-year-old retired school teacher from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who came to see me after a hip fracture that genuinely frightened her. She told me she didn't think of herself as inactive. She walked her dog twice a day, but she also sat for nearly 12 hours between those walks, grading papers out of habit, watching television, reading. We didn't change her diet at first. We just had her stand up and move for 2 minutes every 30 minutes throughout the day. Within 4 months, her physical therapist measured a meaningful improvement in her single leg balance time. And more importantly, Margaret told me she felt steadier walking down her porch steps for the first time in 2 years. The practical tip here is simple. Set a timer. An old-fashioned kitchen timer works fine for every 30 minutes. When it goes off, stand, march in place for 60 seconds, or walk to another room. You don't need a treadmill desk or a fitness tracker, though either helps. The synergy tip is this. Pair your movement breaks with a glass of water each time. Mild dehydration, which affects up to 40% of adults over 65 according to geriatric hydration research, makes muscles fatigue faster and makes you less likely to want to move in the first place. Movement and hydration reinforce each other. Number 4. Stop eating your protein the way you did in your 30s. This one shocks people every time I explain it because most folks think a boiled egg at breakfast and a piece of chicken at dinner covers their bases. It doesn't, not after 60, and the science here is fascinating. Research out of a prominent nutrition institute found that older adults need to consume roughly 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein in a single sitting to meaningfully stimulate muscle protein synthesis, which is your body's process of repairing and building muscle tissue. Younger adults can trigger that same response with half that amount. That's not a small difference. That's nearly double. Why does this happen? It comes back again to anabolic resistance, that reduced sensitivity to the building blocks of muscle. Imagine your muscle cells used to have a doorbell that anyone could ring with a light tap, and a small amount of protein at any meal would get an answer. After 60, that doorbell becomes muffled. You have to knock louder, meaning more concentrated protein per meal, to get muscle synthesis to respond at all. If you spread 30 grams of protein evenly across 3 small meals, you might barely trigger any muscle building. But concentrate it, 25 to 30 grams per meal, and suddenly your body responds. There's also a mitochondrial piece to this. Mitochondria are the tiny structures inside your cells that produce energy, often called the powerhouse of the cell. And after age 65, mitochondrial efficiency can decline by as much as 20%. Protein-rich meals, especially those containing the amino acid leucine, found abundantly in dairy, eggs, and meat, help stimulate mitochondrial repair pathways, essentially giving your cellular power plants better raw materials to work with. I had a patient, Walter, 78 years old, from a small town outside Asheville, North Carolina, who came in frustrated that he was doing everything right, but still losing muscle. When we tracked his actual eating pattern, he was getting maybe 12 grams of protein at breakfast, a little more at lunch, and a modest amount at dinner. We restructured his meals so each one hit that 25 to 30 grams threshold, adding Greek yogurt at breakfast, a larger portion of fish at lunch. Over 6 months, his grip strength, measured with a simple handheld dynamometer, improved by 18%. He told me he felt like he could open jars again without asking his wife for help. And if you've ever lost that ability, you know exactly how much dignity is wrapped up in something that small. The timing tip is to front-load your protein. Don't save it all for dinner. Aim for that 25 to 30 grams target at breakfast specifically, since most people under-eat protein in the morning by habit. The synergy tip is to pair your protein intake with resistance movement sometime within 2 hours, even something as light as standing wall push-ups or seated leg lifts. Protein without a stimulus for muscle building is like delivering bricks to a construction site with no workers present. The materials matter, but they need a signal to actually get used. Now, before we get to the top 3, I need a favor from you, and I mean that sincerely. If this information is landing, if you're nodding along thinking about your own mornings or your own parents, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the like icon. Here's the honest truth. This channel grows because people like you share it, and the algorithm only shows this kind of long-form, science-based content to more people when there's real engagement. I'm not asking for vanity numbers. I'm asking because somewhere there's a 70-year-old man sitting alone who needs to hear item number 1, and he won't find this video unless you help me put it in front of him. So please, subscribe, like, and let's keep going because what's coming next matters even more. Number 3, stop ignoring your sleep the way you ignored it in your working years. I know what you're thinking. Doctor, I'm retired. I sleep whenever I want. But the quality of sleep, not just the quantity, changes dramatically as we age, and most people have no idea how much repair work happens during deep sleep specifically. A sleep medicine study tracking adults over 65 found that time spent in deep, slow-wave sleep declines by as much as 70% between ages 60 and 80 if left unaddressed, while total time in bed often stays the same or even increases. Here's why this is so consequential for an aging body. Deep sleep is when your brain clears out a protein called beta amyloid, which, when it accumulates, has been linked to cognitive decline. Think of your brain like a kitchen after a big dinner party. Deep sleep is the cleanup crew that comes through at 2 a.m. and washes every dish, wipes every counter. If that crew only shows up for 15 minutes instead of 90, the mess starts piling up night after night, year after year. Deep sleep is also when your body releases the majority of its growth hormone, which plays a direct role in tissue repair and maintaining muscle mass. That same muscle we just talked about building through protein. There's an inflammation angle here too. Poor sleep, even just one night of fragmented rest, raises a marker called C-reactive protein, which signals inflammation throughout the body. Chronic low sleep quality keeps this inflammation simmering, like a pot left on low heat all day. Over years, that simmering inflammation has been associated with everything from joint pain to slower wound healing in older adults. I think of Eleanor, 69, from a coastal town in Oregon, who came to me convinced her memory was failing. She was terrified, frankly, thinking it might be the beginning of dementia. When we looked closer, she had untreated sleep apnea, waking up dozens of times a night without even realizing it, never reaching deep sleep at all. After she started using a properly fitted CPAP device, a machine that keeps her airway open through the night, her family noticed a difference within weeks. Eleanor herself told me 4 months later that she finally remembered where she put her car keys without a frantic search, something she hadn't experienced in over a year. The practical tip is to get your sleep evaluated if you snore, wake up gasping, or feel exhausted despite 8 hours in bed. That's not normal aging, that's a treatable issue. For everyone else, keep your bedroom between 65 degrees and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, since body temperature drop helps trigger deep sleep onset, and dim lights at least an hour before bed to support melatonin production, your body's natural sleep hormone. The synergy tip is magnesium-rich foods in the evening, like almonds or pumpkin seeds, since magnesium supports the nervous system relaxation needed to actually descend into deep sleep stages, not just lie there with your eyes closed. Number 2, and this is the one I teased earlier, the one almost nobody talks about. Stop assuming your balance problems start in your legs. They might be starting in your gut. I know that sounds strange, but follow me here because this connection between gut health and fall risk has become one of the most compelling areas of geriatric research in the last several years. A study out of a major hospital system following adults over 70 found that the diversity of bacteria in the gut microbiome, meaning the variety of different bacterial species living in your intestines, predicted fall risk over the following 2 years more accurately than grip strength testing did. Let that sink in. Your gut bacteria may tell us more about whether you'll fall than how hard you can squeeze a hand dynamometer. Here's the mechanism, and I'll keep it simple. Your gut bacteria produce compounds, including certain short-chain fatty acids, that directly influence inflammation levels throughout your entire body, including in your brain and nervous system. After 65, gut bacterial diversity naturally declines, sometimes by 25% or more, partly due to decades of antibiotic use, processed food, and reduced fiber intake. Less diversity means less production of these calming, anti-inflammatory compounds and more production of inflammatory ones instead. That inflammation doesn't stay contained in your belly. It travels through your bloodstream and can affect the nerve signaling in your legs and feet, the very signals your brain needs to know exactly where your foot is in space, something called proprioception. Think of proprioception like a GPS system constantly telling your brain your left foot is 2 inches off the ground, your right foot just touched gravel. When inflammation interferes with that GPS, the signal gets fuzzy, and fuzzy signals mean stumbles. I had a patient, Robert, 76, from a small farming community in Iowa, who had fallen twice in 8 months despite having reasonably strong legs for his age. Physical therapy alone wasn't fixing the underlying problem. We focused on rebuilding his gut diversity, increasing fermented foods like plain yogurt and sauerkraut, and adding a wider variety of fiber sources, beans, oats, and a rainbow of vegetables rather than the same 3 foods on rotation. 6 months later, his physical therapist noted measurably improved reaction time on a standing balance test, the kind where you're gently nudged off balance and timed on how fast you recover. Robert told me, almost laughing, that his wife stopped hovering by the stairs when he walked down them, something he hadn't realized she'd been quietly doing for over a year out of worry. The practical tip is to aim for 30 different plant foods across your week, not 30 grams of fiber, 30 different actual foods, counting herbs, spices, vegetables, fruits, legumes, and whole grains as separate items. Diversity, not just quantity, is what feeds a diverse microbiome. The synergy tip is to pair fiber-rich foods with fermented foods in the same meal when possible, like oats with a spoonful of yogurt, since the fiber acts as fuel for the beneficial bacteria you're introducing, helping them establish themselves rather than passing through unused. And now, number 1, the most powerful habit on this list, the one I genuinely believe separates the people I see thriving at 85 from those I see declining rapidly at 70. Stop training your body and start training your nervous system's reaction speed. This is going to sound almost too simple, but reaction time training, the ability to respond quickly to an unexpected stimulus like a trip or a sudden loss of balance, may be the single most protective factor against the injury that ends independence faster than almost anything else, the hip fracture. A long-term study following adults over 70 found that those who engaged in regular reaction-based training, simple drills involving quick stepping or catching a dropped object, had a 43% lower rate of fall-related hip fractures over a 3-year period, compared to those who did standard strength training alone. Here's why this matters so specifically for aging bodies, and it comes down to something most people have never heard of called the stretch reflex latency. When you're young, if you start to trip, your nervous system fires a correction signal to your muscles in roughly 80 milliseconds, faster than the blink of an eye. After 70, that same correction can take 150 milliseconds or longer, nearly double the delay. That delay is the difference between catching yourself and ending up on the floor. Strength alone doesn't fix this delay. You can have powerful leg muscles and still fall because the signal to use them arrives too late. Think of it like having a fantastic fire truck sitting in the station, fully fueled, fully staffed, but the alarm system takes twice as long to ring. The truck doesn't matter if it never gets the call in time. This is also deeply connected to mitochondrial health in your nervous system specifically, not just your muscles. Nerve cells require enormous amounts of energy to fire quickly and repeatedly, and declining mitochondrial efficiency in aging nerve tissue is part of why that reflex arc slows down. The encouraging news is that this reflex speed is remarkably trainable, even in your 70s and 80s, because your nervous system retains what researchers call neuroplasticity, the ability to form new, faster neural pathways well into advanced age. I think about Dorothy, 81 years old, from a quiet neighborhood outside Phoenix, who came to me after a fall in her kitchen that thankfully only resulted in bruising, but terrified her family. We introduced simple reaction drills, standing near a counter for safety, having a family member call out left or right randomly while she practiced quick weight shifts, and later progressing to catching a small soft ball tossed unpredictably. It felt almost like a game, and Dorothy actually started looking forward to it. After 5 months, her physical therapist measured her reaction time on a standardized test, and it had improved by nearly 30%. But here's what really got me. Dorothy told me that 6 months after starting, she stepped off a curb wrong, started to fall, and caught herself instinctively, without even thinking about it. She said it felt like her body remembered how to save itself. That sentence has stayed with me for years. The practical tip is to start small and safe, always near a sturdy countertop or wall for support at first. Spend just 5 to 7 minutes 3 times a week doing simple, unpredictable movements, having someone call out directions for you to step, or practicing catching and releasing a lightweight object. The optimal timing is in the late morning when your nervous system's reaction speed naturally peaks for most older adults, according to circadian research, rather than first thing upon waking when reflexes tend to be at their slowest. The synergy tip here is powerful. Pair this reaction training with the protein timing we discussed earlier, since adequate protein intake supports the myelin sheath, the protective coating around your nerves that helps electrical signals travel faster. Train the reflex, fuel the nerve, and the two amplify each other. I want you to sit with something for a moment. Every single habit we've covered today, breaking up sitting, eating protein with intention, protecting deep sleep, nurturing your gut, and training your reflexes, none of these require a gym membership, a prescription, or a single dollar spent on supplements you don't need. What they require is awareness and a willingness to do small things consistently. Aging is not a slow surrender. I've watched patients in their 80s move with more confidence and independence than people 20 years younger, simply because they understood what their bodies actually needed rather than what conventional wisdom assumed. Independence isn't about avoiding aging, it's about meeting it with the right tools. Quality of life in these years isn't determined by the number on your birth certificate, it's determined by whether you can still bend down to tie your shoe, still carry your own groceries up the stairs, still get down on the floor to play with a grandchild, and get back up without help. And I promise you, it is never too late to start reclaiming that. Dorothy was 81. Walter was 78. The body is listening even now, even today. If this video gave you something real to take into tomorrow morning, subscribe to this channel because I'm covering one new topic like this every single week. And I genuinely want you in this community of people who refuse to accept decline as inevitable. All the scientific references I mentioned today are linked down in the description if you want to dig deeper yourself. Now, I want to hear from you. Of these 5 habits, which one surprised you the most, and which one are you going to start with this week? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next video.